Slides look great. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for being with us today. My name is Sam Bowers, consultant for continuing education at the State Library of Iowa. You probably have seen me around if you've been in some of our stuff, but a somewhat less familiar face on the CE front is our state data coordinator, Gary Krob, who joins us today from his office in the law library to tell us all about a really exciting thing that is part of the state library's service offerings, which is the State Data Center. Gary, thanks so much for joining us today, and we look forward to learning more.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate any opportunity to talk to folks about what it is I do here and the services that we provide, or I provide, sorry. So we're going to talk, not going to spend a lot of time. I don't have as much time as I normally do to give these speeches, so I'm going to try to get a lot in a short amount of time. So I'm just going to briefly talk about the services that I provide, as well as some of the data sources that the State Data Center uses to provide these services. And then I'm leaving a good chunk of time to really look at the State Data Center website. We've had an online presence for, well, I started in 2001, so at least since 2002, we were really starting to put things online. But we did just recently revamp the State Data Center website, and so it looks different than it has. And so I want to make sure people understand where the data is and how to access it. So what is a state data center? State Data Center is actually a federal state cooperative program between the U.S. Census Bureau and all 50 states, the island areas, territories, Puerto Rico, and then the District of Columbia. I guess that'd be the other one that's not included in the states. And it was started in the mid 70s as just a way for the Census Bureau to kind of alleviate some of the issue, or some of the calls that they would get about data. And they wanted to have local experts in all the states that could help actually answer questions specific to those states. We also were the only place that then would have the books. I mean, when I started, we were getting books, but most of the stuff was coming in on CD-ROM, and that was really the only way to get to it. The Census Bureau didn't really have an online presence at that point. Shortly after I started, they did. But so early on, the State Data Center was really the place where you would come to get the data. That has changed a lot since the internet has evolved. So while some of the data is available on the Census Bureau, and they don't publish books anymore, at least not on a mass scale, we do here still provide a lot of data dissemination. I put a lot of data up on the website. It's Iowa specific, so you don't have to dig through a bunch of other geographies or different states to find the data. And so that's still a primary part of what I do. But then I'm also here to help answer questions about data and help you understand what it is you're seeing. So, besides the online facts that I'll show you later, I spend a lot of my time answering data requests. There is some mapping availability that's on the website. There is also the possibility for me to do mapping for you if that's something you needed. It's a little harder for cities to do mapping because it sometimes doesn't look as interesting, or with 954 cities, it gets a little cluttered sometimes on the map. I do produce statistical profiles of specific Iowa communities and population groups on a yearly basis. I will show you where those profiles are on the website. And that's looking at groups like women in Iowa during Women's History Month. I'll update that profile. After the most current one that will be coming up soon will be African Americans in Iowa, and that'll be released sometime during Black History Month. And there's, I think, 8 or 9 of those profiles, and I'll show you that location in a bit. Those last 2 are really just conversations that we can have either via email or over the phone, where you're unsure about a data source you found, or you found data on my site and you don't quite understand it, or you want to know, is this the right number I need to use for my grant, or is this the right thing if I'm trying to tell my board something about my community? Is this data accurate? And that's something that we can talk about, again, either on via text, or not text, I'm sorry, email or phone. A lot of times that's a little easier on the phone, but I'm a lot more accessible via email especially as a one-man shop. If I'm not in the office or if I'm out at a conference or whatever, I'm not there to answer my phone, but I'm usually accessible via email. So what data sources do we primarily use? As I mentioned, this is a federal state cooperative with the Census Bureau. So most of the data that I have is going to come from the Census Bureau. They have a multitude of censuses, surveys, and estimates. It's not just, a lot of people, when they think of the census, they think of the decennial that comes out every 10 year, but that's just a fraction of the data surveys and estimate programs that they have. They also have an economic census that's done every 5 years. They used to do the ag census. That's now Department of USDA. And then the surveys, they have population estimate surveys. They have different economic surveys like building permits, international trade, et cetera. And then the estimates, when I say estimates, generally that refers to the annual population estimates that they do each year. And actually the 2024 state population estimates will be released later this month. It has to be on the president's desk by December 31st. So that'll be the first wave of I'm sorry, did I say 2024? It'll be 2023 estimates. It's the first wave of 2023 estimates that will be coming out throughout the winter, early spring, or spring, early summer. I think the last set of estimates that come out usually is in June, and those are usually the city estimates. I do have some other federal agency data that's not always on the site, but I have access to, or I use Bureau of Economic Analysis as a supplement to census, some of the census economic data. Office of Homeland Security, that's up there because I do have some data on my site about immigration and naturalization, and that's where that data resides. And I have pulled it from there and put it up on the website. And then I do have bankruptcy data that is coming from the U.S. Bankruptcy Court and is looking primarily at the state and county levels, the number of bankruptcies each year. I used to have a lot more state agency data on my site. It's dwindled a little bit. Some of it's because I can look at the statistics and see that this data set or this report dashboard isn't being viewed as much as the others. So or people through attrition, people have left, and it's a little harder to find or get that data for me now. But I do have some data from the Department of Ed as well as Health and Human Services. And then that last one is we do subscribe to a private data provider, Woods and Pool Economics, and that provides us with population projections for the state and all 99 counties. I get that on an annual basis. A lot of state agencies here use that for planning purposes. Or for mainly for planning, some budgeting, but and it's also used by a lot of local communities. I get calls from different county organizations wanting projections for their counties, or even cities. A lot of times the cities want their city projections, which I don't have. I don't think Woods and Pool produces those, but I know we definitely don't purchase that. We only purchase the county level projections. So a little bit more about the census data. As I mentioned, the decennial is the one that most people are familiar with or they think about. It's to some extent the one that's probably most important to us here in the state of Iowa, because all of our budget and funding allocations come from that decennial count that's done once every 10 years. Some states actually have it written in their legislation where the population estimates that I mentioned previously, that the funding can be related to that either through estimates that they produce within the state or the federally produced estimates. But here in Iowa, we rely strictly on the decennial census. So that's why it's really important every 10 years when that comes out that we make a really good push to try to get as many responses as we can, to get as close to 100% as we can. The decennial census, when I first started, actually in 2001, in 2000, there was 2 censuses that would come out as part of the decennial. I don't know how many of you remember this, but there used to be like a long form and a short form. Everyone got the short form, and then some people would get what was called the long form, and that asked a lot of detailed questions. In 2005, they discontinued that long form because and I'll show you some of the subjects on that one here in a bit, that there was so much data that comes out of that long form that it wasn't useful to only get it once every 10 years. a lot of people, a lot of federal agencies needed that data on a more timely basis. So they started what's called the American Community Survey that comes out on an annual basis. So instead of once every 10 years, this is data that now comes out once a year with some nuances. It comes out once a year, but there's some aspects to that we can talk about. But for the most part, it's just good to know that the American Community Survey used to be that long form, if you were familiar with it. And as opposed to every 10, now it's an annual survey. And then, as I mentioned previously, the population estimates is that program that comes out every year. So why am I here? Why am I talking to you? Why is census data important? I mean, it's important to me because of what I do, but why? I guess better question is why should it be important to you? There's so much information that can be gathered from this data. It's not just that very first one. How many people live here? I mean, that's how it was started in the 1700s. It was the federal government wanted to know how many people were living in the United States. But through that, it's really evolved, and there's a lot of important questions that can be answered now through census data and through the American Community Survey. And a lot of this data is tied to federal grants, private grants, tied to state and federal funding. Um, in fact, every question that is on the decennial census and the American Community Survey actually has to be vetted and approved by Congress. The Census Bureau can't just ask any question they want. There has to be a reason for asking that question. And 99 times out of 100, maybe even 100 times out of 100, that reason is money. There are funds that need to be spent, and there are questions that are being asked in order to figure out how to spend that money. So how has the number of people changed over time? What's the race and ethnicity of our community? Has it changed over time? Are we seeing increases or decreases where we weren't expecting there to be? What languages are being spoken in our county, in our township? And then, what are some of the economic characteristics of our community? What's income levels? What's the poverty rate? What's the unemployment rate? That's something that obviously right now Iowa is in a, and not just Iowa, a lot of the U.S. has been seeing record low unemployment rates. And so, what does that mean when we're trying to attract new businesses or trying to, determine what the workforce looks like? As I mentioned, the 2010 census was the first census that did not have a long form. And so the 2010 and 2020 censuses are very unique compared to all the other censuses previously. And in the fact that there was really only 10 questions, I believe is what they 10 questions, and it would take you 10 minutes. I don't know how true that was. I can't remember, but it really only asked you, besides the number of people who resided in a residence, your housing unit. It asks the sex, age, race, Hispanic origin. It's important to note that Hispanic origin is considered an ethnicity. It is not considered a race. So you could be white Hispanic, black Hispanic, etc. And then household relationship. So I'm filling out the form. Who lives with me and what is their relationship to me? Do I have renters? Do I have children? Do I have grandparents who live in my home? And then tenure, it just means, do I own or do I rent this house? That's the only thing that was asked on the decennial census for the last 20 years. I'm sorry, well, 20 years, yes, but the last two censuses. Other than that, you can't get things like what you can get on the American Community Survey. This is just a screenshot of, it's actually an old slide I've used a million times in these presentations. And it's just a small fraction of some of the questions or some of the data that's available through American Community Survey, and it's changing on a regular basis. I don't think on here. I'm trying to look at this list. Yeah, so internet and broadband, internet and computer presences are a relatively new question that's on the American Community Survey, so we can look at the types of internet, the types of computers that are used in everyone's homes. There's some talk there's a federal register. It's something the federal government has to go through in order to get questions put on the census. They kind of put it out to the public, get their opinion, and so there's some talk about getting some new questions put on the ACS that deal with solar energy, look at electric vehicles, that look at some changes in how homes are heated and fueled, that kind of a thing, marital status, things like that. So They change it, but not very frequently, because the minute, every time they change it, that kind of shuffles the data that's available and it makes it harder to compare from previous years. So they try not to do it very often, but as things change in society, there is a need to continually look at this list and say, okay, what are we not tracking that we need to be tracking? Is there a reason to track it? Is there funding associated with that data? This is just a quick look at the different geography types that are in Iowa. This is not all the geography. The census actually has something that's called census blocks and then block groups and census tracts, which I don't have here. They're specific census related geographies. But these are the ones that some of us are probably a little bit more familiar with. And I like to include this to kind of show the number of different elements within those geographies. So when you're trying to figure out the level of detail you want, or really how much, how many different townships there are, to decide, there's 1,600 townships, 944. I think I said 945, but we did lose one over the last couple years, so I think it is 944. On the website, which I'm going to show you here in a little bit, I generally have on default for most of my reports data for the state, all 50 states and Puerto Rico and the District of Columbia. I'll have data for all 99 counties, all 944 places, 336 school districts, as well as the metropolitan and micropolitan statistical areas. Those are statistical areas that are defined by the federal government, by the Department of Office of Management and Budget. Nothing you really need to know about, but they do exist. So sometimes when you hear and talk about the Cedar Rapids metropolitan area, that's where that's kind of coming from. And on my website, I show how that's defined. So I just wanted to make you kind of aware of the different geography types that are available. So that is that. I only have one screenshot of the website because I actually wanted to go live, and I'm going to go live, but I kind of I don't know how this is saved over time or if people can get access to the slides. But if they wanted just a look of what a brief glance at what the website looks like, this is it. The website URL is there down below, iowadatacenter.org. And this is as I mentioned, the new look and feel. We launched this last year, I believe. Time goes really fast for me now. I think it's only been a year, but hopefully it hasn't been longer than that, because if it does, it's kind of scary. And as I said, we're going to now go live to that. I do want to put this up first before I do that, only because I always joke that this is the most important slide of everything you saw, and that's my contact information. I do this for a living. This is what I do. I don't expect anyone to remember much of what I've said or what I've shown you. I mean, if you take something away from this, that's fantastic. But what I really want you to understand is that I'm here to help you find and understand this data. So the contact information is the most important piece of information for you. That's my name, phone number, and email address if you do need anything. So I am going to now go to the website. Samantha, there isn't anything that I need to address before I do this, is there?
I don't think so. Before, when we were practicing, it works just to switch over. Yep, there you go. Looks great.
Cool. Okay, fantastic. And I don't want to see that because I need to see. Okay, so this is the website. Just hit refresh real quick because it's really one of the things I liked is this little counter thing. It's kind of fun just to watch. That's the most current population estimate in the state of Iowa, 3,200,000. Again, that population will actually be changing here at least in the next 2 weeks. I haven't gotten an official date on when we'll get the 2023 estimate, but that will be changing. The other number is just something I change on every so often. And currently I just have the number of Iowa foreign born according to the 2022 American Community Survey. So up here at the top for navigation, we have a couple different ways to look for the data. We can do it by subject or by data source. I'm going to come back to both of these because this is where the bulk of the data is. But just because it's at the front of the page and I'm going the other direction, I wanted to at least acknowledge them first. thing I want to focus on first, though, is the quick facts. These are some dashboards I have designed that look at communities in our state, and they're very detailed profiles, if you will, that offer kind of snapshots, quick facts about the different states, counties, cities. Which is I'm gonna click on the city quick facts. They all are kind of the same as far as template and the data that they offer. The exception would be here under quick facts where it says census tract quick facts. That was something I developed as a request with the Department of Health and Human Services. So they had some specific data elements they wanted to make sure I included that are not in my state, county, or city quick facts. So there are some differences there, but for the most part, the other one, but they also have a lot of the same ones here. So currently what comes up right away is Red Oak. I just kind of randomly picked a city to start it. But down here in the drop-down box, you can select whatever city it is you're interested in. You can either scroll, I believe if you'd start, I got to get in the box, sorry. If I start, why is that not working? Yeah, sorry, my computer's acting up a little bit. We're just going to scroll. It should be able to type, but it doesn't seem to want me at the moment. So if you just scroll down to your area, say when we want to look at Fort Madison, I'll go Fort Dodge. Hit select. It automatically changes what you're seeing. So this is first thing you're going to see is the total population for Fort Dodge since 1860. Currently at that point they had 672. The most current estimate for them is 24,900, almost 25,000. I guess I'll be surprised if they don't cross that threshold. Population right below it is then by age and gender. So you can look at how it's broken out in 5-year age groups. This is what's called an age pyramid. So it's supposed to kind of look like a pyramid for most of our communities. Nowadays, it doesn't really look like a pyramid. It looks more rectangular, but you still get a sense of the breakdown between male and female. Right below that, this is just a little map that kind of shows you approximately, or not approximately, it's actually where Fort Dodge is. There's just not a lot of detail in the map. Then right below it, we have median age by race for Hispanic or Latino origin, and you can select what you want. So if you want to know the African-American median age for the total population is 26.0, 25.1 male, 27.3 female is the median age. And then you have a breakout down off to the left here that actually shows the race and Hispanic origin breakouts for Fort Dodge. Up at the top where we started, there's that demographic, that's where we're at. You can also look at Fort Dodge data on the social, with social characteristics. So educational attainment, average household size, disability status, ancestry. So what are the top 10 ancestries in Fort Dodge, as well as veteran status, so the number of veterans in the area. And then the last tab is economic. And this is going to show you the unemployment rates, carpooling, which, it's become a bigger factor over time. And that's why in some cases I'm trying to compare how it's changed a little bit. And then poverty rates, both for all people, families, married couple, and then female householder, no husband or spouse present. And so you can kind of see how the poverty rates have changed over time, as well as comparing to how it looks within the different groups. And then finally, median income and occupation percentages. So this is just something that's really quick and easy to look at to get some basic information about your community. There are a couple of things to point out. This is all powered using Tableau. So you can download this. If I click that download tab, you can download it as a cross tab. You can download it in a PowerPoint, Tableau if you wanted to. There's the other thing I like to mention is there's a share button. So you can share it as a link. So let's say you selected Fort Dodge. If you copy this link and send it to somebody, they're going to get the Fort Dodge information that you've already selected, not the default Red Oak, is what I think is currently. This embed code, if you have a website and you have what's called like an iframe placeholder, you can actually copy this embed code and just paste it into that area, and then you have this specific dashboard on your website. And what's nice about that is when I update it with new data, it updates automatically on your site. So You don't have to go back and forth every year to see if there's new information. That's the quick facts. The other thing I wanted to point out was publications, and that's where the profiles I mentioned are. Scroll down here. We have those 8. Was I right about the number? 7. 7 profiles that look at different population groups in Iowa. African Americans, women, older Iowans, which is March, if I remember right. Asian and Pacific Islanders is April. Oh no, I'm sorry. March is women National Women's History Month. So April is older as Iowans, older Americans month, and Asian Pacific Islander month. Latino profile gets updated September. Native American profile gets updated in November. The Iowans with disabilities has not been updated yet. That's on me. It probably should get updated in the summer. It always falls in a bad time of the year for me where I usually have conferences or vacation stuff. So I do tend to, that one does tend to slide a little bit. And then I start waiting for the new data to come out. So the data I used to update it just came out last month. So I do plan on updating the Iowan with disabilities profile this month. The last stuff under here, the publications, these are some old publications that were only in book format that actually we scanned years ago, available for you if you ever wanted to look at. So as I said, the bulk of the data here is under either data by subject or data by source. It's 2 different ways because I have 2 different types of users. I have people who know exactly the type or where the data comes from. They're data gurus, if you will, and so they know I'm looking for American Community Survey. I'm looking for some state agency data. So that's where I want to go. I would say that's probably 50% of my user base, and then the other 50 is more novice users, people that just want to know. They're trying to find income and poverty data. So we broke it up 2 different ways. It's the same data, it's just 2 different ways to search for it. It really doesn't matter how you go at it. So either one, if you go for it, we talked a little bit about the American Community Survey earlier. If you click on that link, you're going to get a list of different first subjects, demographic, economic, social characteristics. Again, kind of like those quick facts. There will be a housing component, which is not on the quick facts that are also here, with then tables underneath it. And if you just select, we'll look at poverty status by age and sex. If you click on that, most of my reports look very similarly. I actually kind of picked a not a great one because there's not a graphic component. Let's look at this. We'll look at median household income. So a lot of my reports, the first thing you're going to see is going to be some kind of infographic, some kind of picture, image, dashboard that's a little bit more appealing. So and generally it's a little easier to read because it's just going to be for a specific area. So in this case, this is Iowa geographic level. So you can select which level of geography you want. Say you do want city, you hit on that. Now you have to change the name because there is an Iowa City, but there's not Iowa. We'll scroll down and we'll just now grab, this is where you can actually type in, I'm from Ely. So we'll click Ely, Iowa, highlight it. Boring information because there's not a lot of race or ethnic diversity in Ely. Well, I guess there's some Hispanic population there. And so that then changes what we look at as far as the graphic component. And then it also then populates just a basic cross tab down here for that area. If you're looking for just the data table, that's usually the next tab over. And that's just going to be a cross tab that just breaks it out. For however many geographies you want, however many. So if you, let's say if we change this to counties and we just go, we're going to just select the first 3 or 4 counties, hit apply. And so then that just populates over here. And so now you have the race and ethnicity, median income, family, median family, non-family data. And then there's usually some other filters. You can limit the number of years you want to look at. If you only just want to look at the most current, you can eliminate that, etc. Again, these all I just wanted to show you one because they all kind of look the same and work the same, and I wanted to make sure that you understood that. And I am completely out of time, and that's on me. So I don't know if there was any questions, and I apologize if there were.
We are at time. Guys, isn't Gary just such a wealth of knowledge? I always get so excited hearing about all this data because I just think there's so much here that libraries can apply as you're thinking about strategic planning, as you're thinking about programming to offer, as you're thinking about how you want to market. There's so many great things you can dig into here, and it's well worth your time to spend some time on the State Data Center website. We don't have any time for questions right now, but Gary did have his contact information up earlier, and I know he is here to help. There's obviously way more we could do on this, and there's also some great resources from the Census Bureau itself, the National Census Bureau. And so I'd encourage you to look around at their website as well if you're interested. But I want to say thank you to Gary for his work with the State Data Center and for his time in presenting this Lunch with the State Library session. I'm going to go ahead and close this out here and encourage everyone to get out and enjoy a little bit of sunshine and a quick walk before the afternoon craziness starts. And thanks again to Gary, and everyone enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.